What if I told you that the person serving your coffee could be the CEO of the company? What if that just a waitress was actually the visionary who built the empire you're sitting in? Today's story will shatter every assumption you've ever made about judging people by their appearance. This is the tale of Zephyra, and how two simple words changed everything. The dinner rush at Moonbeam Bistro was electric. Every table buzzed with conversation, steam rose from expertly plated dishes, and the open kitchen hummed with choreographed precision. At the center of this orchestrated chaos moved Zephyra, her movements fluid and purposeful as she navigated between tables with practiced ease. 26 years old, with determined eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard work, she wore the standard uniform: black slacks, white button-down, navy apron. Nothing distinguished her from any other server, except perhaps the way she genuinely smiled at each customer, the way she remembered regulars' favorite orders, the way she moved through the space like she owned it, because she did. 14 months ago, this building had been a condemned warehouse. Broken windows, water-damaged floors, and a roof that leaked in 17 different places. Zephyra had walked through that disaster with an architect's eye and an entrepreneur's heart, seeing potential where others saw problems. "Table 8 needs their check," called Devon, rushing past with a tray of appetizers. "And Table 15 is asking about wine pairings." "On it," Zephyra replied, but her attention was caught by the new arrival at Table 12. The man commanded attention without trying. Expensive suit, platinum watch, posture that screamed executive authority. He sat alone, immediately pulling out his phone, fingers drumming impatiently on the white tablecloth. She approached with her standard welcome. "Good evening, sir. I'm Zephyra, and I'll be serving you tonight. Can I start you with—" "Finally." His voice cut through her greeting like a blade. "I've been sitting here for 2 whole minutes. At the establishments I frequent, service begins the moment you're seated." Zephyra's smile remained steady. "I apologize for the wait. We're quite busy tonight, but you have my full attention now. What can I get you to drink?" "Dom Perignon 2010. And I'll need your wine menu, assuming you carry something beyond house selections." The request hit her like a physical blow. Dom Perignon 2010 cost $400, 0 cents per bottle, more than most customers spent on an entire meal. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't carry that specific vintage. However, we have an excellent champagne selection, including—" "Stop." His voice carried enough authority to turn heads at nearby tables. "I didn't ask for alternatives. I asked for Dom Perignon 2010. Are you telling me this place doesn't understand premium service?" The dining room began to take notice. Conversations quieted as diners sensed tension building. Zephyra felt the familiar knot in her stomach, the same feeling she'd had when the bank initially rejected her loan application, when food critics first visited, when every challenge threatened to destroy her dream. "Sir, we focus on exceptional wines that complement our cuisine. I'd be happy to recommend something that would enhance your dining experience." "Enhancement?" The man's laugh was cold. "I'm Thornton Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Industries. I don't need enhancement recommendations from someone who clearly doesn't understand her clientele." The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Blackwell Industries employed half the city. Everyone knew the name, knew the reputation, knew the power it represented. Zephyra felt every eye in the restaurant turn toward their table. "Mr. Blackwell, I understand you're accustomed to the finest service. Let me bring you our best champagne, and if it doesn't meet your standards, there's no charge." "That's not the issue," Blackwell snapped, his voice rising. "The issue is competence. When someone of my stature enters an establishment, certain expectations should be automatic. This is basic hospitality." Zephyra's hands remained steady, though her pulse quickened. She'd built this restaurant from nothing, had sacrificed everything to create something special. But she also understood that sometimes success meant swallowing pride to preserve the bigger picture. "I'll be right back with your champagne, Mr. Blackwell." At the bar, Zephyra selected their finest bottle, a $120.00 Perrier Jouet that typically impressed even the most discerning customers. Her bartender, Marcus, watched her with concern. "Boss, you don't have to take that abuse. We can handle difficult customers without—" "It's fine," she said quietly, though her jaw was tight. One unhappy customer isn't worth disrupting everyone else's evening. She returned to find Blackwell scrolling through his phone, deliberately ignoring her approach. When she presented the champagne, he barely glanced at the label before waving dismissively. "This is completely inadequate. The vintage is wrong, the brand is secondary, and frankly, the temperature is unacceptable. I specifically requested Dom Perignon 2010. Sir, this is an exceptional champagne that—" "Exceptional?" His voice boomed across the dining room. "I've dined at Le Bernardin, the French Laundry, 11 Madison Park. This amateur-hour operation wouldn't qualify as a food truck at those establishments." The words stung because they were designed to wound. Zephyra had studied those restaurants, had learned from their techniques, had built her own vision of what fine dining could be. But she maintained her composure. "I apologize that our selection doesn't meet your expectations. Perhaps I could suggest an alternative from our menu." "Your menu?" Blackwell's laughter was harsh. "I've already reviewed your offerings. Pedestrian ingredients, uninspired preparations, portions that would embarrass a culinary school. This entire operation is a joke." The dining room had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen. Zephyra felt the protective anger radiating from her team, saw Marcus gripping a glass so tightly his knuckles were white. When the appetizer arrived, their signature dish that had earned a glowing review in the city's premier food magazine, Blackwell took one bite and pushed it away with theatrical disgust. "This is absolutely unacceptable. The seasoning is heavy-handed, the presentation is amateurish, and the concept is fundamentally flawed. I can't imagine how disappointed I'll be with the main course." "Mr. Blackwell, that's our most popular appetizer, if you'd prefer something else." "What I'd prefer is competent service in a restaurant that understands its limitations. What I'd prefer is not wasting my valuable time explaining basic hospitality to someone who clearly doesn't belong in this industry." The final insult hung in the air like poison. Zephyra thought of the 18-hour days she'd worked during construction, the nights she'd slept in the office because she couldn't afford both rent and restaurant expenses, the suppliers who'd taken chances on her, the staff who'd believed in her vision. "I'm doing everything possible to ensure you have a positive experience." "A positive experience?" Blackwell stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "That's impossible now. This food is mediocre, the service is incompetent, and the entire staff is clearly in over their heads." He threw his napkin on the table with dramatic flair. "I've wasted enough time on this charade. I want to speak to the manager, now. I want to speak to whoever's responsible for this travesty, so I can explain exactly what passes for acceptable service in the real world." The silence that followed was absolute. Every person in the restaurant, customers, staff, even the busboys, froze in place. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The climax of a confrontation that had been building for 30 minutes. Zephyr felt the weight of every eye in the room. She thought of her grandmother, who'd given her the loan to start this place. She thought of her staff, who'd stood by her through every crisis. She thought of the dream she'd built from nothing, and the values she'd sworn to uphold. Looking directly into Thornton Blackwell's eyes, her voice clear and unwavering, she said, "That's me." The two words detonated in the silence like a bomb. Blackwell's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something approaching panic. The transformation in the dining room was immediate and electric. Customers who had been watching with sympathy for the beleaguered server suddenly realized they'd been witnessing something entirely different. "What did you say?" "I said, that's me," Zephyra repeated, her voice carrying a quiet authority that had been hidden beneath her server's apron. "I'm the manager, Mr. Blackwell. I'm also the owner. This is my restaurant." The revelation rippled through the room like a shockwave. Blackwell's mouth opened and closed without sound. In his decades of corporate intimidation, he had never encountered this scenario. He had spent the last half hour systematically destroying the very person he demanded to see. "That's impossible," he stammered. "You're just a waitress. You can't own this place." "I can understand your confusion," Zephyra replied, her calm demeanor now clearly that of someone completely in control. "People often assume that servers are just servers, that the person bringing your food couldn't possibly be the architect of your entire experience." She gestured around the restaurant with obvious pride. 14 months ago, this was a condemned warehouse. I was 25 years old with a business degree, $30,000 in loans, and a vision of what community dining could become. For the first time, Blackwell really looked at his surroundings. The design was flawless. Every light fixture positioned to create intimate conversations, every piece of art carefully selected to enhance the atmosphere, every detail orchestrated to perfection. I spent 4 months gutting and rebuilding this space. I learned plumbing, electrical work, and construction management because I couldn't afford contractors. I visited every supplier personally, building relationships that would sustain us through the difficult early months. Her voice grew stronger, carrying to every corner of the restaurant. "I wait tables because I believe that understanding every aspect of the customer experience is essential to creating something exceptional. I've washed dishes, prepped food, cleaned bathrooms, and handled every crisis that comes with this business." Marcus stepped forward from behind the bar, his voice filled with respect. She worked 19-hour days during construction. I watched her install every fixture, paint every wall, learn every aspect of this business because she refused to ask others to do what she wouldn't do herself. Other staff members emerged from their stations. Devon from the host stand, kitchen staff from the back, servers from throughout the dining room. They formed a supportive presence around the restaurant, not threatening, but unified. "This isn't just a restaurant, Mr. Blackwell," Zephyr continued. "It's a community. We're not just serving food, we're creating connections, celebrating milestones, providing comfort during difficult times. Every person who works here understands that we're part of something bigger than ourselves." She paused, her eyes meeting his directly. "What you experienced tonight wasn't incompetence. It was passion. It was pride. It was someone who has poured everything they have into creating something meaningful. Serving it to you personally, because that's what hospitality truly means." Thornton Blackwell felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the complete destruction of his worldview. Every assumption he'd made, every judgment he'd passed, every word he'd spoken had been fundamentally wrong. The incompetent waitress was actually an accomplished entrepreneur. The amateur operation was actually a sophisticated business built from scratch. The mediocre food was actually the creation of someone who understood excellence better than he did. He looked around the restaurant with new eyes. The elderly couple celebrating their anniversary weren't just taking up valuable table space. They were creating memories that would last a lifetime. The young family teaching their children restaurant etiquette weren't just being loud. They were building traditions. The business dinner at the corner table wasn't just another meal. It was relationships being forged over carefully prepared food. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "I was wrong. About everything. About this place. About you. About the way I've conducted myself tonight." "Mr. Blackwell." "No, please," he interrupted, raising his hand. "Let me finish. This wasn't a bad day or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was who I am. This was how I treat people every single day, and I never even considered the impact until this moment." He sat back down heavily, his expensive suit suddenly feeling like a costume, his corporate title feeling like a burden. "I built my company from nothing too. Started with a single contract and a determination to succeed. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to be on the other side of power." The dining room remained quiet, but it was no longer the uncomfortable silence of witnesses to a confrontation. It was the respectful attention of people recognizing a moment of genuine human transformation. "Your restaurant is extraordinary," Blackwell continued, his voice gaining strength. "The attention to detail, the quality of service, the way your staff clearly believes in what you're doing. It's everything that dining should be." He pulled out his business card, looked at it for a long moment, then placed it on the table. "I was going to use this to threaten your reputation, to warn other people away from your establishment. Instead, I want to ask if you'd allow me to start over. To be the kind of customer this place deserves." Zephyra's expression softened. "Of course, Mr. Blackwell. That's what real hospitality means, giving people the opportunity to be their best selves." The transformation in the atmosphere was immediate. Conversations gradually resumed, the kitchen returned to its rhythm, and the normal energy of evening service slowly returned. But something fundamental had changed. Every person in that room had witnessed proof that dignity and grace could triumph over intimidation and prejudice. "Would you like to try our chef special?" Zephyra asked. "It's a dish that represents everything we're trying to accomplish here. Exceptional ingredients, expert preparation, served with genuine care." "I would be honored," Blackwell replied, and for the first time all evening, he truly meant it. The meal that followed was a revelation, not because the ingredients were exotic or expensive, but because every element had been chosen with purpose and prepared with skill. The locally sourced vegetables, the house-made pasta, the sauce that had been perfected through months of experimentation, each bite told the story of someone who understood that great food was about more than just sustenance. As he ate, Blackwell found himself noticing details he had never paid attention to before. The way Zephyra checked on every table personally, not just his. The pride in the kitchen staff's faces as they watched diners enjoy their creations. The seamless coordination between servers who clearly respected each other and their work. "This is remarkable," he said when Zephyra stopped by his table. "I've eaten at restaurants with Michelin stars that couldn't match this level of care and attention to detail." "Thank you," she replied. "But the stars aren't what matter to us. What matters is creating something that brings people together, that makes ordinary moments feel special." As the evening progressed, Blackwell watched the restaurant with new appreciation. He saw families creating memories, couples celebrating anniversaries, friends gathering for conversations that would strengthen their bonds. He realized that what he had dismissed as an amateur operation was actually something much more sophisticated, a business built on understanding what people truly needed. When Zephyra brought his check, he looked up at her with genuine curiosity. "Can I ask you something? After the way I behaved tonight, why did you respond with such grace? Most people would have thrown me out or given me exactly what I deserved." Zephyra considered the question carefully. "Because anger would have accomplished nothing except making me feel temporarily better. But showing you who we really are, what we actually stand for, that had the potential to create real change." "And it did," Blackwell admitted. "It changed everything." He left a tip that reflected not just the quality of service, but his recognition of the lesson he'd learned. As he prepared to leave, he turned back to Zephyra. "I want you to know that I'm going to be different. Not just here, but everywhere. You've reminded me that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their job title or appearance." "That's all any of us can hope for," she replied. "The opportunity to be a little better tomorrow than we were today." 3 weeks after that transformative evening, Moonbeam Bistro had become more than just a restaurant. It had become a movement. The story of Zephyra's revelation had spread across social media, shared by everyone who witnessed it and countless others who understood its deeper meaning. But the real change was happening in ways that couldn't be measured in likes or shares. Blackwell had returned 5 times since that first night, each visit revealing new layers of the establishment he had so thoroughly misjudged. On his 3rd visit, he brought his executive assistant, Patricia, apologizing for years of dismissive treatment. "I want you to see what real leadership looks like," he told her, as they sat at the same table where his transformation had begun. Patricia watched in amazement as Zephyra moved through the dining room with the same grace she'd shown that fateful evening. "She's incredible," Patricia whispered. "How does she manage to make everyone feel so important?" "Because she understands something I forgot," Blackwell replied. "That treating people with dignity isn't about being nice, it's about recognizing their humanity." The lesson had begun to transform Blackwell's entire company culture. During his next board meeting, he implemented a new policy requiring all executives to spend time in entry-level positions throughout the organization. "If you can't respect the people who make our success possible," he announced to stunned board members, "then you don't deserve to lead them." Meanwhile, at Moonbeam Bistro, the impact was equally profound. Staff members who had witnessed Zephyra's handling of the crisis began carrying themselves differently. They had seen their leader face the ultimate test of character and emerge stronger, more dignified, more authentic than before. Marcus, the bartender, started a training program for new servers based on what he called the Zephyr method, approach to hospitality that emphasized genuine connection over subservience. "We're not here to bow and scrape," he would tell new employees. "We're here to create experiences that matter." Devon, the host, began sharing the story with customers who seemed particularly demanding or dismissive. Not as a threat, but as a gentle reminder that every person they encountered had depths worth exploring. "You never know who you're really talking to," became his gentle refrain when dealing with difficult guests. The kitchen staff, led by head chef Isabella, developed a new appreciation for the front-of-house team. They had always respected Zephyra as their boss, but seeing her handle that crisis with such grace, while maintaining her commitment to service excellence, had deepened their understanding of what leadership actually meant. 6 weeks after the incident, Zephyra was reviewing inventory in her office when Devon knocked on her door. "Boss, there's someone here to see you. Says she's from the James Beard Foundation." Zephyra looked up in surprise. The James Beard Foundation was the most prestigious culinary organization in the country, known for recognizing not just exceptional food, but exceptional leadership in the hospitality industry. The visitor was Elena Rodriguez, a foundation representative who had heard about the Blackwell incident through industry connections. "I'm here because your story represents something we've been trying to promote for years," she explained as they sat in the restaurant's quiet, afternoon atmosphere. "What do you mean?" Zephyra asked. "The idea that great hospitality isn't about hierarchy or intimidation, it's about creating genuine connections between people. Your response to Mr. Blackwell's behavior demonstrated a level of leadership that we rarely see in our industry." Elena went on to explain that the foundation was launching a new award category for leadership in hospitality excellence, and Zephyra's handling of the crisis had inspired the entire program. "We want to recognize people who understand that serving others is the highest form of leadership, not the lowest." The conversation lasted 2 hours, during which Elena learned not just about the dramatic evening with Blackwell, but about Zephyra's entire philosophy of business and life. "You've built something here that goes beyond profit margins," Elena observed. "You've created a model for how businesses can serve their communities while maintaining their integrity." Word of the James Beard Foundation's interest spread quickly through the local restaurant community. Other owners began reaching out to Zephyra, wanting to understand how she had built such a strong culture of respect and dignity. At a regional restaurant association meeting, Zephyra found herself giving an impromptu speech about the Blackwell incident and its aftermath. "The question isn't whether you'll face difficult customers," she told the assembled owners and managers. "The question is whether you'll let those encounters define you or refine you." She shared specific strategies she had developed over the years: how to maintain composure under pressure, how to separate personal attacks from professional challenges, how to use conflict as an opportunity for growth, rather than just something to survive. When Mr. Blackwell demanded to see the manager, she explained, he thought he was escalating to someone with more authority, but what he was really doing was asking to see someone with more responsibility. And responsibility isn't about having power over others. It's about having power to serve others better. The speech was recorded and shared online, reaching thousands of hospitality workers who had faced similar challenges. Comments poured in from servers, hosts, and managers, sharing their own stories of difficult customers and how Zephyra's example had inspired them to respond with dignity rather than defensiveness. 2 months later, a local television station approached Zephyra for a follow-up interview. They wanted to explore how the incident had affected both her business and her personal perspective on leadership. Zephyra, share with us for a moment the profound impact Zephyra's mind had on. The most surprising thing, she told the interviewer, was how many people reached out to share their own stories of being judged by their appearance or job title. I realized that what happened with Mr. Blackwell wasn't unusual. It was just unusually visible. The interview also featured Thornton Blackwell, who had agreed to participate as part of his own journey toward better leadership. I want people to understand that change is possible, he said. I was wrong, I admitted it, and I've been working every day since then to be better. When asked about the most important lesson from the experience, Zephyra didn't hesitate. That every interaction is an opportunity to either build someone up or tear them down. And the choice we make in that moment says everything about who we are as people. Today, Moonbeam Bistro continues to thrive, but its impact extends far beyond its walls. The story of that evening has become a case study in business schools, a training example for hospitality companies, and an inspiration for anyone who has ever felt underestimated or dismissed. More importantly, it has sparked conversations about respect, dignity, and the assumptions we make about others based on limited information. Schools have used the story to teach students about empathy and judgment. Corporate training programs have incorporated it into leadership development curricula. The simple phrase, "That's me," has become shorthand for the idea that we should never underestimate anyone, that every person we encounter has depths and capabilities we might not immediately recognize. Zephyra often reflects on how that one evening changed not just her business, but her understanding of her own purpose. I thought I was just running a restaurant, she says. But what I learned is that every business is really about human connection. Every transaction is an opportunity to remind people of their worth. The story continues to spread, carried by everyone who believes that dignity and respect shouldn't be luxuries reserved for certain people or certain situations. It's a reminder that in a world that often seems divided by status and appearance, the most powerful response is simple human decency. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. That changing the world doesn't require grand gestures or perfect circumstances. Sometimes it just requires the courage to stand up, look someone in the eye and say, with quiet confidence, "That's me." 4 months after the infamous evening, Zephyra was training a new server when she noticed a familiar figure approaching the hostess stand. Her heart skipped, not from anxiety this time, but from curiosity. Thornton Blackwell stood at the entrance, but he wasn't alone. Behind him waited a woman in an elegant business suit and a younger man who carried himself with the nervous energy of someone about to face a crucial test. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwell," Devon greeted him warmly. "Your usual table?" "Actually," Blackwell replied, his voice carrying a different quality than that first night. "I was hoping Zephyra might have a moment. I'd like her to meet some people." When Zephyra approached, Blackwell's demeanor was entirely transformed. Gone was the demanding executive who had terrorized her staff. In his place stood a man who had learned the difference between authority and respect. "Zephyra, I'd like you to meet Victoria Chen, our new VP of Human Resources, and my son, Marcus Blackwell. They've both heard about our memorable first encounter." Victoria stepped forward, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about you and what you've built here. Thornton has been telling everyone at the company about the lesson you taught him." Marcus, who looked to be in his early 20s, seemed more nervous. "Dad insisted I come here before starting my new job. He said I needed to understand what real leadership looks like." Zephyr glanced at Blackwell, who nodded encouragingly. "Marcus just graduated from business school. He's brilliant with numbers and strategy, but he's never worked in service. I thought perhaps you want him to work here?" Zephyr asked, surprised. Just for a week, Marcus interjected quickly. Dad said I can't truly understand business until I understand what it means to serve others. He said you could teach me things they don't cover in MBA programs. The real education begins. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Moonbeam Bistro wearing the same black pants and white shirt uniform as every other server. Zephyra had agreed to the arrangement, intrigued by the opportunity to show a young executive what hospitality really meant. Your first lesson, she told him as they stood in the empty dining room, is that every person who walks through that door has a story. Your job isn't to judge their story, it's to honor it. Marcus nodded, though his expression suggested he didn't fully grasp the concept yet. That understanding would come. His first customer was Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who came in every Tuesday for lunch. She ordered the same thing every time, grilled chicken salad, no croutons, dressing on the side, and always sat at table 6 by the window. She's been coming here since we opened, Zephyra explained. Her husband passed away 6 months ago, and this is the only place she feels comfortable eating alone. Marcus approached the table with nervous energy. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Marcus, and I'll be serving you today. Mrs. Patterson looked up with tired eyes. Where's Zephyra? She usually takes care of me. She's training me today, Marcus replied. But I promise you'll receive the same excellent service. What followed was a masterclass in patience. Mrs. Patterson asked detailed questions about every ingredient, changed her mind twice about her drink order, and requested extra napkins, then more water, then a different fork. Marcus's MBA training had prepared him for complex financial models and strategic planning, but nothing had prepared him for this. As the week progressed, Marcus encountered the full spectrum of human behavior. There was the businessman who barely looked up from his phone while ordering, the young couple celebrating their anniversary who wanted everything to be perfect, the family with 3 young children who tested every ounce of his patience. But it was on Thursday that Marcus experienced his own "that's me" moment, the moment of truth. A well-dressed couple in their 50s sat at table 10, clearly uncomfortable with the restaurant's casual atmosphere. The woman kept glancing around dismissively, while the man openly criticized the decor. This place is trying too hard, the woman announced loudly enough for other diners to hear. Look at these mismatched chairs and amateur artwork. Who designed this place, a college student? Marcus felt his face flush. He'd watched Zephyra carefully select every piece, had heard the stories behind each design choice. But he maintained his composure as he approached their table. Good evening. I'm Marcus, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. The man barely glanced up. Finally, we've been waiting forever. What's your wine selection like? Please tell me you have something better than grocery store brands. As Marcus began to describe their carefully curated wine list, the woman interrupted. Look, we're only here because our regular place was booked. Just bring us something drinkable and let's get this over with. I understand you might prefer a different atmosphere, Marcus said calmly, but I assure you that our chef and staff are committed to providing you with an exceptional experience. The man laughed harshly. Exceptional? This is clearly an amateur operation run by people who don't understand real hospitality. Where's the manager? I want to speak to someone who actually knows what they're doing. Marcus felt the familiar knot of anxiety, the same feeling his father must have experienced months earlier. But then he remembered Zephyra's words. Every person who walks through that door has a story. Looking directly at the couple, Marcus said quietly, I am the manager tonight. And I'm also learning that real hospitality isn't about expensive furniture or famous chefs. It's about treating every person with respect, regardless of their expectations or attitudes. The couple stared at him, clearly not expecting such a response from someone they'd dismissed as inexperienced. This restaurant was built by someone who understands that true leadership means serving others, not demanding to be served, Marcus continued. And every person on our staff, from the busboys to the head chef, embodies that philosophy. As he spoke, Marcus realized he was no longer nervous. He was standing up for something he believed in, defending values that had been demonstrated to him throughout the week. The couple left without ordering, but Marcus felt victorious. He had learned what his father had learned months earlier, that real strength comes from treating others with dignity, not from demanding it for yourself. When Zephyra heard about the encounter, she smiled with pride. "Now you understand," she said. "It's not about the customers who appreciate what we do. It's about maintaining our values even when others don't share them." Marcus returned to his father's company the following week, but the lessons he'd learned at Moonbeam Bistro traveled with him. He implemented new policies for treating support staff, changed the company's approach to customer service, and most importantly, carried forward the understanding that true leadership is measured by how you treat people who can't do anything for you. The cycle continued, proving that the simple phrase, "That's me," had the power to transform not just individuals, but entire organizations, one person at a time.